Let's hear it for Stolen Thunder. I was just thinking the first time that I was here 7 years ago when you were trying to decide whether you wanted me as minister or not. So the first service, and the first thing I said to Lorenzo after that service was, I've always dreamed of having a band like that in worship service. So we begin with a tale of a tooth, a garden, and a soul. My summer of 2022 began with a dead tooth and my first ever root canal. Yep. As I explained to my friend Alejandro last week, it was not as bad as I expected, but it was pretty bad. Alejandro and I were sitting in his freshly planted backyard garden in the Tower District, sweltering, and watching his newly planted succulents sizzle and wilt in the 107-degree heat. Sweltering there in the garden, I continued sharing my woeful root canal experience with Alejandro. It was so strange and unnerving, I said. They drill a hole at the end of the tooth and then suck the pulp and every living thing out of it. Then they fill it with a rubber-like substance and cap it off with a hard, permanent filling. So instead of a living, vibrant, pulp-filled tooth, you're left with something completely lifeless inside, but with an exterior that looks like nothing is wrong. Alejandro looked at me and then said in a quiet voice, "That's how I feel all the time these days. Completely lifeless inside, but with an exterior that looks like nothing is wrong." Alejandro, who gave me permission to share a conversation, went on, saying, "This never-ending pandemic, the perpetuation of the big lie, the revelations of the January 6th hearings, more and more voter suppression, climate chaos, the entrenched reality of race in America, inflation, and now the overturning of Roe v. Wade has sucked everything living out of me. I feel completely lifeless inside, but with an exterior that looks like nothing is wrong." Alejandro paused, then teared up. "I feel like I've lost my soul. I feel like I've lost my soul." Soul isn't a word that pops up a lot in Unitarian Universalism. Some of us were raised in religious traditions that threatened the eternal damnation of our soul if we didn't believe or act in a certain way. Maybe we discarded the idea of our soul when we realized that hell was a human-created fiction. Perhaps the word soul feels unscientific or like a no longer needed imaginary friend. Perhaps we like the idea of soul in music, but not the notion of a soul in us. But soul is, it's this juicy, spiritually rich word that I think deserves a place in our Unitarian Universalist tradition. So, what is soul? What is a soul? Does everybody have one? Can we lose it? Can we get it back again? What does it mean if, in the words of Universalist minister A. Powell Davies, life is just a chance to grow a soul? Life is just a chance to grow a soul. I love that South American indigenous tribes have one word, Carib, which means both heart and soul. And they have one word that is witoto, which means soul and pulse. In these indigenous traditions in South America, soul is understood to be something directly connected to the source that animates our life. In a sermon that I quoted a few years ago, the Reverend Susan Veronica Rock, a Unitarian Universalist minister, writes, "The ancient Greeks thought of the soul as the life force. The philosopher Aristotle wrote that it is the life-giving principle. Our great Unitarian philosopher and mystic Ralph Waldo Emerson thought of the soul as that potential within each human being for living the fullest life." In her book, Revolution from Within, feminist Gloria Steinem wrote, "Several millennia worth of observers have believed that a unique and true self resides in each of us. It may be suppressed or nurtured, thwarted or developed, but it is there. Anthropologists, philosophers, and other close observers of humankind have tended to agree with Plato. The soul knows who we are from the beginning." Thomas More, a former professor of religion and psychology, writes, "It is impossible to define precisely what the soul is. Definition is an intellectual enterprise, and the soul prefers to imagine. We know intuitively that soul has to do with genuineness and depth, as when we say certain music has soul, or a remarkable person is soulful." In his book, Soul and Archaeology, Phil Cassano offers this explanation. Soul defies definition, yet it surrounds us, permeating every aspect of our lives and culture, from art, music, and literature to religion, society, and identity. Soul is that unmistakable fire that infuses all truly creative endeavors and sends the shiver up the spine, telling us that we're in the presence of lived truth. In the Hindu and Sikh traditions, that presence of lived truth is called Sat Nam. Sat Nam. Can you just say that with me? Sat Nam. Sat means truth, and Nam means name or identity. So Sat Nam means true identity, or even more boldly, your identity is truth. Now, I bet you call yourselves a lot of names in your head sometimes, but probably truth is not one of them we use a lot. That's why I love this. Sat Nam, true identity. Your identity is truth. That is soul. A friend once told me, soul is the inmost part of me, my consciousness, my essence. But soul is also something bigger than me. Soul is hard to describe, but it's easy to feel, and I know when I am feeding my soul, I know what grows it. I know what grows it. If, as Reverend A. Powell Davies says, life is just a chance to grow a soul, how do we do that? How do we expand that unmistakable yet ineffable aspect of self? I'd like to suggest 3 simple yet effective ways to grow our soul. These originate from a sermon I offered several years ago, but this morning we explore them afresh in the context of our present complicated, complex times. So, the first way that we grow our soul is to pay attention. Pay attention. Could you just say that with me? Pay attention. The Bhagavad Gita, the great Hindu scripture from India, says attention is not concentration. Attention is interest. If you're interested in something, then you're attentive. And if you're attentive, you may discover many things. My friend Sarah shared a discovery she had one day in the midst of digging a new garden. It was hard work, and all she was feeling was the effort of breaking through the Fresno hard pan. Anybody know that effort of trying to do that? Oh, my Lord. Exhausted, she stopped, dropped the pick, and sat down beneath a big tree on the far side of her yard. She shut her eyes and just rested. She said, "When I opened my eyes and looked up, I was stunned," she recalls. What moments ago was just a big old tree for leaning against had become an exquisite work of living art. The afternoon sun danced on the shining surfaces of thousands of leaves shifting in the breeze. An earthiness hung in the air, and a low buzz of unseen insects sounded forth an unmistakable serenade. I ran my hand across the soft, uneven surface of soil, grass, and moss, and felt connected to the essence of the earth. My dear ones, something happens when we tune our awareness. Our sense of sight, hearing, taste, touch, and smell opens us to the miracle waiting in that moment. We become attuned to something beyond our churning of repetitive thoughts. We reach beyond our commotion of emotion. Paying attention roots our inner self while simultaneously connecting us to what is around us and also beyond us. Paying attention expands and enlivens us. Poet Mary Oliver writes, "Sometimes I spend all day trying to count the leaves on a single tree. To do this, I have to climb branch by branch and write the numbers down in a little book. So I suppose from their point of view, it's reasonable that my friends say, 'What foolishness, she's got her head in the clouds again.' But it's not. Of course I have to give up. By then I'm half crazy with the wonder of it, the abundance of the leaves, the quietness of the branches, the hopelessness of my effort. And I am in that delicious and important place, roaring with laughter, full of earth praise." Pay attention. Pay attention. The second way we grow our soul is to pay it forward. Pay it forward. Could you say that with me? Pay it forward. We are not self-created, self-sustaining beings, although we love to champion our own sense of feeling independent. We are here today because people cared enough to guide us on our way. Others continue to care for us today. Throughout the entirety of our lives, we are receiving kindness, nurturing, and mentoring. The embrace that holds us today reaches back generations and generations before our birth, and it's going to extend far ahead into days beyond our knowing. Life calls us to be part of this legacy of love. As my mom used to tell me when I was growing up, the best way to feel part of something bigger than yourself is to do something for someone else. I remember as a young child going every Thanksgiving Day with my mom and sister to the Veterans Hospital and giving each of the patients a red carnation and a thank you. Pay it forward. Someone who struggled in school as a kid and only made it through because a neighbor sat with them as they sounded out the words in their reader tells me that they now volunteer as a tutor. I feel part of someone's future, they say. Pay it forward. A friend who savors the joys of gardening says her favorite part of the garden is giving it away. Each Sunday morning, she snips and cuts and makes up fresh bundles of herbs, tying them with pretty ribbons and bows. She leaves them on the front porch of her neighbor's home so that when they come out to get the Sunday newspaper or to take the dog for a walk, they also get an aromatic gift from the garden. Dear ones, our soul grows deeper when our heart's embrace grows wider. Pay it forward. An older member of our church, who mostly shelters at home because of each new COVID variant, still sends a card to everyone in the congregation who is sick or has suffered a loss, even if they don't know them. Pay it forward. Someone who felt truly welcomed at church on the first Sunday they visited our Alluvial Avenue campus prior to the pandemic is now standing at those church doors as a greeter with a mask, welcoming someone else who is visiting for the first time. Pay it forward. 3 people who discovered our virtual campus in the early months of the pandemic now serve as valued virtual members of our annual pledge drive team. Pay it forward. Pay it forward. The third way to grow our soul is to pay the price. Pay the price. Could you say that with me? Pay the price. There is a price for living in this world. There is so much beauty and joy and caring and love found in being alive, but there is also so much loss, fear, failure, disillusionment, and unsolvable emptiness. We're happy to get the good stuff, but so many of us fight against the painful pieces. We try to avoid them, fix them, stifle them, or just make them go away. Many of us feel that something's wrong if everything isn't right. But that's not the way of life. As Janet Rand writes, to try is to know that sometimes we're gonna fail. To hope is to know that sometimes we will feel disappointment and despair. To expose feelings is to know that sometimes someone won't like our true self, our Satnam. To place our ideas and dreams before others is to know that sometimes they will not be respected. And that's true for the ideas and dreams of this progressive congregation, sometimes in the larger conservative Fresno community. To love, to truly love, is to know that sometimes we're not going to be loved in return. To have a mind is to know that sometimes we will be unsure, anxious, or confused. To have health is to know that sometimes we will be ill. To be young is to know that we will grow old. To have a body is to know that sometimes it's gonna hurt, and to know that someday it will slow down, and then slow down more, and then slow down even more. Dear ones, to live is to know that we will die. To die is to know that we will live on through the lives we've touched while we were here. Our love will live on in the memories of those who shared this journey with us. Pay the price. Life is a chance to grow our soul. Growing our soul means we have the experience of being alive, Growing our soul means we shape the experience of being alive. Growing our soul means we share the experience of being alive. We grow our soul when we pay attention. We grow our soul when we pay it forward. We grow our soul when we pay the price. Que así sea, bendito sea. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen.